Hey friends, Peggy Hall back with you from thehealthyamerican.org. I'm streaming live and today is Wednesday. It's October 23rd, 2024. I'm celebrating the great news that Andrew Doe, one of the public servants on the board of the Orange County Supervisors, I think that's how you pronounce it. Some of you would say, gosh, Peggy, that's so disrespectful. Well, I know, and it's a little tongue-in-cheek out of the many, many times that I went to that board, and they were disrespectful with their heads down, with their chairs turned, they would get up and leave when we would come to give our testimony after waiting for hours and hours. So, it's a little bit of lighthearted snark, as I would say. And what happened is when I was breaking all of this information, breaking news about all of the corruption that I've been covering for years, and finally it coming to the light of the FBI and the Department of Justice, and this Andrew Doe pleading guilty, probably to get less prison time because he is guilty of so many violations of the law, state law and federal law, and he is pleading guilty to bribery. I don't think he was bribed. I think he was the mastermind behind it. But having said that, I've heard from healthy Americans that work in the government, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. A healthy American who wrote to me and said, Peggy, your video about the corruption of Andrew Doe made a light bulb go off in my head, and it reminded me of the corruption that I witnessed when I was working for the city government. I'm going to share that story with you in just a moment from a healthy American. And before I do, I want to share a word from the sponsor of our video. And our live stream today is sponsored by my friends over at noblegoldinvestments.com. I'll have an interview with the CEO coming up at the end of this month. You don't want to miss it. But for now, if you are concerned about the future of the U.S. economy, you're not alone. There's so much uncertainty in the air. It's natural to fret about the security of your retirement savings. But there is one asset that stands the test of time, and that is gold. For centuries, gold has been a hedge against market volatility and economic instability. With the gold IRA from Noble Gold Investments, you can harness the power of precious metals to help protect your financial future. By rolling over your existing IRA or 401k. So think about that. You already have it. Maybe you want to diversify and do something with it. Call for expert advice to see how to do that. 877-646-5347. Speak to someone in the United States, maybe even Colin's father, the CEO's father, and he will walk you through it to find out how you can enjoy the potential for long-term growth and stability. This is by diversifying your portfolio with a tangible asset that has real value. Setting up your own gold IRA has never been easier with Noble Gold Investments' streamlined process and expert guidance. So this election year, do not let the volatility and uncertainty keep you up at night. We only have a couple of more weeks. A lot of people are getting tense here. You can certainly cast your vote for the timeless safety of gold and silver. And for the Trump fans, you will get up to 10 of these 1 ounce solid silver Trump coins, or you can opt for this 10 ounce solid silver American flag bar if you open up a qualified account. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com. Of course, there's always a risk of investment of any kind. There's never a guarantee, but get your questions answered over at noblegoldinvestments.com. Friends, I want to read to you an email that came in from a healthy American who said, Peggy, your video about the corruption of Supervisor Doe made a light bulb turn on. She said, thank you so much for today's Doe video. This was just a week ago. And she said, back in 91 and 92, I was a naive young woman who got a job reading water meters for the city of Westminster. Now, let me stop there for a moment. Let me know if you're familiar with Orange County, California, if you're familiar with the city of Westminster, which is the city, along with Garden Grove, that has the highest population of Vietnamese outside of Vietnam. Back in 1975, I believe it might have been 74, 75, Vietnamese and Cambodians were brought to Orange County, California, to be settled in the aftermath of the Vietnam War. Many of them went to Camp Pendleton, and many were just given apartments in Garden Grove, Westminster, and the Catholic Church, under the auspices of Catholic Charities, took on a large number of these families, and it just mushroomed from there. If you're familiar with immigration, you know that once somebody plants the seed, so to speak, and becomes a resident here, they can invite other family members. And before you know it, where I grew up in Garden Grove, I don't recognize it at all. It is Little Saigon, probably with all of the other things that go along with these Vietnamese cities, and people love going there for the Vietnamese food and the culture and the diversity and the vibrancy. I have many Vietnamese students that I've taught over the years. I love the industriousness and the hardworking attributes of the law-abiding Vietnamese community. Unfortunately, as we've seen with Andrew Do, he brought his communist ways with him. So when she mentions that she worked for the city of Westminster in the early 90s, you have to understand that she was in a city that was very heavily influenced by the Vietnamese political machine. All right. She said, I scored the second highest on the civil service test, and my direct boss was the newly hired finance director for Westminster. I just remembered, thanks to your video today, how upset I was that this very competent and ethical finance director, I'll just call him Brian, came under attack from the Westminster Board of Supervisors. She said, or whatever they were called. It's the City Council, Westminster City Council. She said, and why was that? Because he had just pulled the city out of the red and into the black, meaning it was no longer, the books were balanced and it was no longer bleeding money, all right? Westminster was just starting to be self-sufficient without any state government aid. I remember I got an image, a feeling of a dark, evil entity heading the attack on the finance director, Brian. I also remembered that indeed the Vietnamese mafia was there in Westminster and was shaking down Vietnamese business owners. And she said, I'm not sure if I got that right, but the fingerprint expert at City Hall told me that, and get this, the Vietnamese criminals only stole from the Vietnamese. I'm thinking now that they must have started out in Orange County that the same way that they operated in Vietnam. The way that you described your gut feeling, Peggy, with your initial encounter with Andrew Do was exactly the feeling that I got when I heard in 91 and 92 that Brian was under attack from the Vietnamese businessman on the city board. She's referring to my first interactions with Do, and my discernment told me this is not a man to be trusted. I could care less where he came from, his ethnicity. That doesn't bother me. What bothers me is the integrity and whether or not someone is going to be following the law or whether or not they appeared underhanded. And he did not appear to be trustworthy. He just had cold, dead eyes and a blank, uncaring countenance. And he was very aloof and disconnected from the constituents, as though he couldn't be bothered. He also spearheaded this illegal act whereby we would no longer be able to speak in front of the Board of Supervisors, but we would elect or nominate one person to speak for the hundreds of us. I mean, talk about a communist way of doing business and conducting business and conducting the government. That is so bizarre to me. That's Andrew Do. So she says, I was so upset looking at this good man, Brian, who was doing his finance job so well, and then he became a target of evil because of it. You know as well as I know that his cleaning up the city books would only expose the corruption. So the evil guys had to stop him. She writes, I quit that job in mid-92. So I don't know what became of it all. Needless to say, I never worked for a government department again, and it's okay with me. I was a few years out of college. I was bright, happy, and very efficient. Now, this is interesting, just talking about working for the government. She says 2 of the lifers, meaning lifelong employees in the billing department, thought that I was faking my meter reads because I finished my route so quickly each week. One of them wanted to prove that I was faking it. So I took her with me at the beginning of the next route. All she had to do was walk alongside me, inputting the numbers as I called them out. I was keying open covers, clearing debris from glass covers, calling numbers, and replacing lids. After the second block, she had had enough, and she was confident that I was legitimately fast. So she goes on talking about her early days in Orange County and different things where she's worked. And she said, I think I found your first video in early 2020 when you had just come out of the Board of Supervisors meeting. It probably was the one that I just shared with you in the preceding video, which was all about a litany, just all of these laws that these supervisors were violating. And I told them back in 2020 that these were felonies, that they were going to go to prison, and that they were not above the law, and that I was doing them a favor to let them know about all these laws that they were violating. Because every time I called their office, their staff would tell me, well, we're really not really up on the law. Well, guess what? I'm up on the law. And you know what, friends? You can be up on the law. I don't have any special powers. All I did was research. I went on the internet and I started researching different laws related to emergencies and hoaxes and fraud and all of that. And that's where I compiled these laws. The only difference between the only difference is that I was dedicated to exposing this evil, because I can't stand to see people be defrauded by these fakes, phonies, cronies, and crooks. So she goes on to say, thank you for all of your work on this and all of your videos. She said, I actually packed my car and I drove to Florida's East Coast 3 weeks ago. She said, I would love to meet up with you if possible. So for those who don't know, I'm splitting my time between California and South Florida. And it's a good thing I am, because I wouldn't want the Vietnamese mafia to know exactly where I am at any specific day, time, location. Anyhow, I thanked her for writing, and she gave me approval to read the email. And I'm so grateful for all of you that have been writing and sharing with me your stories. I do have some emails that are coming in from people that want me to keep the information confidential, especially those that work for the Orange County Department of Health, which is under the Orange County Board of Supervisors. The Orange County Department of Health was also named in my lawsuit, along with the Orange County Board of Supervisors, for keeping the fraudulent hogwash going so that they could line their own pockets. The judges said, well, I can't really understand your lawsuit. I'm going to have to read it a little. I need a little more time to read it. And then it got tossed to another judge. You know what? Your third grader could have understood it, because it's as simple as this. The law states that you have to hold a meeting to discuss whether or not there's an emergency. The county never held a meeting. We sued them to hold the meeting. They said, we don't have to hold a meeting because it's an emergency. But the law says in an emergency, you have to hold this meeting. So it was a merry-go-round and a clown show. And it's no surprise that this felon, public serpent Doe, his wife, was the #2 judge in the criminal courts in Orange County, even though mine was a civil case. It doesn't matter. They all have their influence and their tentacles going out. So she's going down as well. And it's very sad. In my previous video, I said, what a waste to make these choices that are going to land you in prison. Absolutely stunning. So thank you, everybody, for being on board. That wraps it up for today. I've got a few more little video snippets that I want to share with you that summarize what has been going on. And ideally, this is going to strengthen a potential appeal for my case. Now, I did not sue for money. It's not about that whatsoever. It was about holding the county accountable for the laws that they are required to follow. And what this dodo bird said, and this is why I knew he was a communist from the get-go, he said, oh, even though the law says we have to hold a meeting, we don't have to hold a meeting. We'll wait for the governor to tell us what to do. Yeah, no. You are a county board that has the statutory requirement to vote on these local health emergencies. To this day, The county of Orange is still under a COVID health emergency because they never voted to end it, which means they can put their hand out for more money that will stick to their fingers, that will go into their pockets and line the pockets of their cronies, just like I alleged in my lawsuit. So ideally, this is going to strengthen the suit. The judge at the appeals court will overturn the ruling of the corrupt McConville, who said, oh, it's moot. The governor said the emergency's over. That was the whole point of the lawsuit. The governor doesn't get to end the county emergency. Only the county supervisors can. I know, you probably think it's more complicated than that. That's what the judge said. Oh, I didn't read after the first paragraph. I'll have to take this under further consideration. And then he retired. And then it got kicked to another judge. And we showed up and he said, well, today we're just here to meet to put it on the calendar for another day. And they ran out the clock. And it is despicable and it's stomach turning. And I wish I had my vomit bucket on hand, but I do celebrate because I know that I stand in victory. And I told you that many times. I stand before you in victory. Victory is ours. And there will be much more corruption that is going to be exposed. I'm never going to back off. This is what I'm called to do, and I'm grateful that you are alongside me. I'll take a look at your comments, friends, at the end of the video, and I will refer to those, and ideally, I'll include some of those in my free Substack, peggyhall.substack.com, and I look forward to seeing you in an upcoming broadcast. Thank you, everybody, for being on board. Say it with me as we march this all the way